There is a person in your life right now who has hurt you. Maybe it was something they said, sharp, careless, delivered at exactly the wrong moment, landing in a place that is still tender. Maybe it was something they did or failed to do, a betrayal or an absence that you have been carrying around ever since, turning it over in your hands, feeling the weight of it at odd moments during the day. Maybe it was your mother, your partner, a colleague, someone who was supposed to be safe and wasn't. And the anger is still there. You know it is. You might have built something careful and adult around it, politeness, distance, the performance of having moved on. But underneath that structure, the anger is still warm, still waiting. You have been told that forgiveness is the answer. You have tried to forgive. Maybe you have even managed it for a day or two before the whole thing rises up again. Because forgiveness without understanding is a lid pressed onto a boiling pot. The pressure doesn't go anywhere, it just waits. What if the anger was never the problem? What if it was a signal, pointing with absolute precision to something you haven't yet been able to see? Stay with this, because what comes next is going to change the way you look at the person who hurt you, and it might change the way you look at yourself. Think about the last time you were truly, deliberately unkind to someone. Not a moment you're proud of. A moment when you said something cutting, withdrew your warmth, pushed someone away, lashed out. Can you find one? Most people can, if they are honest. Now, why did you do it? Not the surface reason, not what you told yourself afterward. Why did you really do it? If you sit with that question long enough, past the rationalizations, you will find something uncomfortable and very familiar. You were in pain. You were overwhelmed, or scared, or exhausted, or feeling unheard, or carrying something old and unresolved that had nothing to do with the person you aimed it at. You didn't hurt them because you were powerful. You hurt them because you were suffering and didn't know what to do with it. Hold that for a moment. Hold the version of yourself that was in pain, that acted out of that pain, that caused damage it didn't fully intend. Really hold them. Can you feel any compassion for that person? Because now I need you to look at the person who hurt you and find them there too. This is the thing almost no one tells you about the people who wound us, because it requires a kind of seeing that most of us have never been taught. It requires you to look past the surface of what happened, past the act, past the words, past the version of events your anger has been rehearsing, and look at the human being underneath. The person who hurt you was in pain, not as an excuse, not as a reason to minimize what happened to you or pretend it didn't matter, but as a fact as plain and as verifiable as anything you will ever know about human behavior. People who are genuinely at peace within themselves do not go around wounding others. Cruelty is not a symptom of contentment. Coldness is not the behavior of someone who is full. Every act of harm that one human being delivers to another is rooted, without exception, in that person's own unprocessed suffering. They didn't know how to hold their pain, so it spilled, and it spilled onto you. Your mother, who was critical, was she carrying her own unmet longing to be seen, her own wounds from a mother who was critical of her, her own fear that love was conditional, and she was always failing to earn it? Your partner, who withdrew, were they terrified of intimacy in a way they had never been able to articulate, shaped by an early experience of love that taught them closeness meant danger? The colleague who undermined you, was their cruelty a symptom of their own desperate insecurity? A person so frightened of being inadequate that they needed to make you feel smaller to feel safe? You don't know. You may never know the full story. But you know, because you have lived inside your own story, that people are almost never as simple as the damage they cause. And somewhere beneath the person who hurt you is a frightened, suffering human being who didn't have the tools to do anything other than what they did. Now feel what happens inside you when you actually let that in. Not as a performance, not as something you're supposed to feel, but genuinely when you allow yourself to see, even for a moment, the suffering underneath the person who hurt you. Something in the anger shifts. It doesn't disappear immediately, but it changes texture. The hard, righteous heat of it begins, ever so slightly, to soften. Because anger, when it is fully understood, reveals itself to be made of something else entirely, grief mostly. And underneath the grief, almost always, an unfulfilled wish to have been loved more carefully. This is what it means for understanding to be the foundation of love, not a warm feeling, not a performance of generosity you don't actually feel. A clear-eyed act of seeing through the surface of what was done to the suffering that drove it, and discovering that your anger and their pain are not opposites, they are two faces of the same wound. They hurt you out of suffering. You are angry because you are suffering. There is more in common between you than your anger has been willing to admit. And the moment you truly see that, the moment the connection is made, not intellectually but in the body, in the breath, in the chest, the anger loses something essential. It loses its certainty, because anger requires a villain. It requires the other person to be simply, cleanly, unjustifiably wrong. And understanding dissolves the villain, not into a saint, just into a human. A wounded, struggling, imperfect human, doing what wounded humans do when they don't know what else to do with their pain. There is a practice for this. And it is the simplest thing in the world to describe and one of the most demanding things you will ever actually do. The next time the anger rises, or right now, with whoever is in your mind as you listen to this, close your eyes and breathe. Just breathe once, all the way in, all the way out. And then try to see the other person not as they were when they hurt you, but as they might have been as a child. Small, uncertain, learning from the adults around them what love looked like and how the world worked, absorbing, without consent, the wounds and limitations and unresolved fears of the people who raised them. See the child who grew into the person who hurt you. See what that child might have needed and not received. See how the person you are angry at might have been formed, not as an excuse, but as an explanation. And notice what begins to happen in your chest as you do. This is not weakness. This is not naivety. This is the most sophisticated act of emotional intelligence available to a human being. To look past the damage to the damaged person beneath, and to understand that you are looking at someone shaped by forces largely beyond their control, just as you have been shaped by yours. You are not so different from each other. The difference is mostly in which wounds you received, and from whom, and how young you were when they arrived. And here is where it comes full circle, back to you, because the compassion you extend to the person who hurt you is not only for them, it releases something in you. Every moment you spend locked in the story of what they did, rehearsing the injury, maintaining the anger, tending the grievance, is a moment you are still in that room where the hurt happened. The anger keeps you there. Understanding is the door out. Not because what happened was acceptable, not because the wound wasn't real, but because you deserve to be free of it, free of the room, free of the rehearsal, free of the version of you that is still standing there, still waiting for something that may never come. Understanding does not require an apology from them. It does not require them to change, to acknowledge what they did, to make it right. It requires only that you see them, really see them as a suffering human being who was doing the only thing their pain knew how to do. And in that seeing, the grip of the anger loosens, not all at once, not without effort, but enough to breathe, enough to begin to put down a weight you have been carrying far longer than you should have had to. So tonight, bring to mind the person you are angry at, just one, the one whose face appeared first when I said that at the beginning. Breathe in slowly, and just try to hold one question as you exhale. What might they have been carrying? You don't have to answer it fully. You don't have to forgive them tonight. You don't have to reach out, or reconcile, or pretend anything is fine. You only have to let the question exist, to allow the possibility that the person who hurt you was not a force of nature aimed specifically at your destruction, but a struggling human being lost in their own pain who didn't know how not to pass it on. That question, held gently in the breath, is already the beginning of freedom. And in the morning, you may wake up and find that the room where the hurt happened is slightly less airless than it was, that the story has more texture and less heat, that the weight, while still there, sits a little differently on your shoulders. That is understanding. That is what it does. And that, quietly, without drama, without anyone having to say a single word, is how anger dissolves into something you can actually live with. Breathe in, see them, breathe out, begin to be free.